being from North St. Louis, going to these vast places where you didn't see other houses, much less you could touch it again. I really fell in love with the outdoors.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, powered by DeerCast. And a little First Form energy here. I am Tim Chelsvik.
I'm Matt Drury, and we have a very special in-studio guest.
Oh, my goodness. We've got Lieutenant Governor for the state of Missouri, Mr. Mike Kehoe.
Mike, how's
Thanks
it going?
for having me on, you guys.
That's
right.
right.
Going great.
So there's a lot of reasons we wanted to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for years. We've known each other for a couple years now. And I think the very first time we met, we sat there at the Capitol there in Missouri and talked hunting and construction and
surprise.
Yeah, and,
a little bit of everything.
Yeah. It was a great opportunity to get to know you, but more than anything, kind of find out a little bit more about your backstory, which I found fascinating. So, you're kind of on the tour right now. The primaries are coming up here soon in Missouri, and I think anybody that's listening to this, whether you're in Missouri or not, it's going to be a good episode because I think issues as it pertains to government and conservation, all states fight with probably a little bit of give and take there. So it'd be interesting to kind of hear your opinion on that and how they work hand to hand. And in general, I wanted to hear a little bit about your backstory and kind of just give people a chance to listen to kind of where you came from and where you're going.
You bet. Well, the Screaming Freedom. That joker right there will light you up in a good way.
That's right.
I appreciate you supplying
like
that, and appreciate the First Farm. It's I have kind of one of those crazy humbling stories, only in America type thing, and I really can't believe I'm on a podcast with you guys because we're big fans. My wife and I are big fans
deal.
of you guys. You guys are a big deal. Just
Mark and Terry.
just ask you.
We always say
We're the
that.
C team.
Don't forget Tech Boy and Show.
That's right.
And so I'm from North St. Louis City, inner city neighborhood. Did very humble beginnings. My father left when I was a year old. My mom raised 6 kids by herself. I was the youngest. And, we just worked. And my mom was a strong person of faith. Mm-hmm. And anytime we whined about not having something, her advice on how to be successful was simple. That was work harder, pray harder. Yeah. And so that's just the way we were raised. But my journey in the outdoors started at that same time, and I just want to throw that in there before I tell the rest of the story. We had a parish priest that lived 2 doors down from us who was a big hunter. And I started out going up in northeast Missouri, walking windrows with him, rabbit hunting.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a little BB gun. I don't know if it was a Daisy or Red Ryder, but it was a BB gun. And we had 2 dogs, Peppy and Pansy. I'll never forget them. And I would shoot with the BB gun, and this Father Doyle, who's a great friend of ours to this day, or my brother who'd be with me, say, good shot and everything. I never got the rabbit, but, with a BB gun, it's not going to kill it.
Taught him a lesson.
I'll never forget the day that Father Doyle gave me an heirloom from his family, which was a Stephen Savage 410
nice
side-by-side shotgun. I have that gun to today.
Awesome.
Cool.
And then I actually got to start hunting rabbits with them, actually, instead of just acting like I was doing.
Yeah.
So... And if you lived in North City, our houses are so close together, you could touch each other. Yeah. You didn't really know the outdoors existed. So, going up in Lincoln and Pike counties where we went, up the Avenue of the Saints, and those early experiences of being able to go out and hunt and enjoy that. Since I didn't have a father, my older brother was very, very influential in my life. This parish priest friend of ours, Father Doyle. But it was just fantastic. But so that's my kind of outdoor start in my adventure. And by the way, when I told Johnny and Jeannie Morris that, our mutual friends, Jeannie Morris came and grabbed me and said, I never knew that. I can't believe that story. I said, yeah, Jeannie, I still got that gun today. So
it's unlikely. It's unlikely that a kid from North St. Louis would end up anywhere in the outdoors.
A lot of my friends never made it out of North St. Louis, so I'm really blessed to be here. But anyway, I started washing cars at 15 for a Ford dealer. If you're in the St. Louis area, you'd know Dave Sinclair. Mr. Sinclair literally became my mentor, gave me some breaks in life, and I started my small business career there. We had a manufacturing company in Lynn, Missouri that the boss, Mr. Sinclair, was a part of. I eventually bought him out of that. We built emergency vehicles. I got there when I was 25 years old. The company had 25 employees and was having very tough financial problems, and we figured out a way to turn that around. I just went to that business the other day to have a rally for our campaign. Today, they're one of the largest emergency vehicle builders in the United States and 140 employees. So
it's amazing.
Really proud of how that company progressed. About the same time I start buying cattle, I'm a first generation farmer. So just in a month or so, I'll be 40 years in the cow-calf business.
So let's stop on that for a minute. So what prompted you to want to become a first generation cattle farmer?
Well, again, my mentor, Mr. Sinclair, had a farm outside of St. James, Missouri.
Yep.
And again, being from North St. Louis, going to these vast places where you didn't see other houses, much less you could touch it again. I really fell in love with the outdoors, and he was big into horses. I'm big into horses now. He was big into cattle, and I loved that work. To me, it wasn't work. I mean, it was hard, as you know. Sure. Anybody in agriculture knows that's very hard. But that was like relaxing for me. So he got that passion in me, and I took it from there. So it's been a crazy journey. Went on from the manufacturing business and still in the cattle business, and acquired the Ford dealership in Jefferson City. Met my wife, Claudia, who's here with me today. As you know, she's a better hunter than I am. Yeah. We met on a blind date and got engaged in 3 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah. And if we make it to October, that's 35 years ago.
Pretty good.
So
sounds like
she threatens a lot, but hopefully she'll stick in there with me. And really never had politics on my mind. I still today don't inherently trust politicians all the time. It was not my destiny. I wasn't born to do it, but a spot came open in the Missouri State Senate, and it was in our local area, so I didn't have to go live anywhere. I could live right at home. And I thought a businessman in politics, somebody who signed both sides of a paycheck, somebody who's created jobs like you guys have, that would be a good voice of reason in the state capitol. So that's how I got started there.
What did Claudia think of that? Because it's a family. It's a family, like it's
position.
Something, that everyone's involved in that.
Well, Claudia has done a great job of really raising our kids. I tried to be as much involved as I could be. We have 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. And so when you serve in a local state Senate seat and we could be home every night, it was really like work. I worked at the dealership 70, 80 hours a week. It was really not a change in pace because when you're the local Ford dealer, like a lot of businesses that watch your podcast, they're involved in the community. They're the chamber chairman, which I was. They're on the United Way board, which I was. We were very involved in the community anyway. So doing that and going to a parish picnic or doing something that you have to do as part of your Senate job really is also something I was doing as my automobile dealer job. So it wasn't a huge stretch. Now, going from there to running statewide, that's a big challenge. That required a lot of thought and prayer and Claudia and our kids' blessing. But we're really at a incredible spot for our state to where we choose our direction. So we decided to get into that.
And then so you become lieutenant governor and then decide, hey, when Governor Parson's done, I'm going to go ahead and throw my hat in the ring.
That's correct.
So what kind of decision is that? I mean, that's a big move, right?
Hey, Claudia, I got an idea.
Well, have you ever heard of the term taking a lot of arrows?
That's he's taking them today, actually.
That's what happens,
brother.
That's what happens when you decide to run statewide. You better have pretty thick skin, and because you're going to have a target on your back. Most people, when we start talking about this a year ago, were like, Mike's a nice guy, but he doesn't have statewide name ID. This will really be hard for him to break through the clutter. And Claudia and I literally said to each other, that's just not acceptable. The state's not going to go in a good direction unless we continue to have a business person up there, a first-generation farmer, and somebody who was came from very basic beginnings. Yeah. And I'm fortunate to be alive and here today based on those beginnings. And so we think that kind of perspective gives us a unique perspective as we decide what's best for Missouri. And my number one direction that I take every day is keep government out of my life. Y'all pretty smart. You don't need to have a bunch of politicians telling you what to do every day.
Hear, hear.
But when it comes to infrastructure, public safety, education, et cetera, that's where we have really good opportunities to move along. Conservation issues, very much enjoy working on that. So we think that our policy positions and the directions that we can take the state are much different than the competition that's out there in the primary, and we hope Missourians will choose the same.
What do you say to people right now who are, it's July, and most of us are already fatigued by the political rhetoric and
national level? It's been a crazy last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of movement. And so you get fatigued as the regular guy, the regular Joe going out there to the 9-to-5 job. It's like, oh my God, like, do I zone in and really pay attention to this? Or I just say, all right, I'm going to vote for whether I'm a Democrat or a Republican. I'm just party line, how do you break through that clutter?
Well, what I call hate politics is really getting on people's mind. And it's tough on us as a family, I will tell you. It's very hard to do this. And so you got to think twice about it before you do it. But you have to kind of continue to be you. I'm going to always continue to be the Christian conservative that my mother raised me to be. And we try not to pay a lot of attention to social media, but we do want people to go out and exercise their right. I am the veterans advocate for the state of Missouri. Yesterday, I was in the Cameron Veterans Home. I spent a lot of time on veterans issues. I'm a guardian on honor flight that takes veterans to D.C. And I tell people all the time, Democrat, Republican, I don't care. I know the men and ladies, the heroes that have given us that right. Do a little research and please go vote, because those folks signed a blank paycheck. And so we want to make sure that, as painful as it is at some of these elections, as sick as you are of all the ads and all the things, and I'm 10 times more sick than the average person of the ads. Try to do a little something like our website's MikeKehoe.com. Look at the various races. All candidates have a website. See who you think fits the mold that you feel is a good direction for Missouri. We hope that's us, but if nothing else, please vote.
So I think Tim touched on a little bit the odds of a guy from a kid from North St. Louis then becoming an outdoorsman. I think the odds in general, every step of the way as you continued through your life, the odds were probably not in your favor, right? And everything you've done, but you've continued to persevere and move on to a different stage and succeed at it. And I think that's an important element that you want from your leaders in government. It's like, you know, that's what I want. I want somebody that has done these things and succeeded and run a business and know what is important to make sure the bottom line, you know, continues. We're not just in debt as a state or as a country. And so, I mean, those are important issues that it may not be the sexiest of things always, but it's really probably, but that might be the conservative in me. Like that's something that matters to me, that we're just making the right choices.
Listen, I've always been a fighter and I've always been the underdog. So when somebody says you don't have a chance, that's always a challenge to me. We didn't have a chance to save that manufacturing business in Lynn. We didn't have a chance to grow the Ford dealership. We started an ethanol plant up in Carrollton, Missouri. People said that will never work. We figured our way through that. No kid from North St. Louis who doesn't even know what a cow or calf is can have a cow and calf operation. Those have always been challenges to me, and I love a challenge. I'm a fighter. That's what I've done all my life. And I'm a relationship person, so I don't succeed in any of these operations without a lot of great relationships. Obviously, a strong wife and very strong kids that support me. But employees at those businesses, vendors that we dealt with, customers at those businesses, those are the things that pull you through. And those relationships that you build end up coming back into your life 10 times sometimes over a period of years that really end up helping you.
Yeah. So let's dive into the hunting aspect of it a little bit. So you guys, you love turkey hunting, you and your wife, and I've always heard she's the better hunter. So we're going to put that out there right now.
Yeah, it's hard to accept.
You guys, don't you also use your property for the youth season hunt?
Yeah, so we have some friends of ours who have deer hunted on our farm for, I think this might be their 38th or 39th year. And it's funny, they started their kids on our farm deer hunting, and now the grandkids are deer hunting on our farm. And they're from inner city St. Louis as well. But we've done some with youth on youth turkey season specifically, where we've had some kids come down and actually we're involved with an inner city charity right now in North St. Louis where we're trying to figure out a way to bring those kids down to the farm just to get them involved in outdoors and potentially hunt at some point in time. But we've always been involved in the governor's youth turkey hunt, which is a season, happens to 2 weeks, I think, before turkey season, where the governor brings folks together to the mansion and then they go hunt at various farms the next day. We have a lot of great companies who are Missouri-based callers that make their box calls and different things. We give them to the kids, and it's a lot of fun. So
I know Logan Burke, who we've had on the podcast, he's one of the guides that helps out. Ray I.
Bill Cooper had been a part of that also.
A couple guys associated.
Yeah. So that's really cool getting, especially with my background, when you can get a kid exposed to what the outdoors is like just before you even say, here's a bow, here's a gun, here's a fish, any of that stuff. Just, these kids that have never been outside the city, they just don't know, because I'm one of them. Yeah. They just don't know that world exists.
Yep.
Yeah. To see or to get the feeling when you go out, you're sitting in nature, sunrise, birds chirping, world waking up. It's a much different vibe than what they're accustomed to.
What's interesting, because that's how I got Claudia to go. And I said, you just won't know what the world's like unless you sit there at 5:30 in the morning and you experience, what's about to happen. And coincidentally, and you guys would love this guy from Alabama. His name's Chuck Sykes. He's one of the best turkey callers in the United States. And we're fortunate enough to be a friend with him. And I said, when you sit there and let Chuck call those birds in, you're going to see something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't want to do it. I got too much going. She's an early riser, so it's not about waking up. But that first time she won at 6 o'clock and got one of those toms, and I have that video.
Oh, cool.
Now I could play the video for, because Chuck also records in 4K because he has a little hunting show that he plays down in Alabama. And I could play that for you, but I couldn't put the audio on because she was so excited. Lots of things came out of that.
I've actually seen it.
Things were said.
You have played it for me. I remember it.
Yeah, the video is pretty cool though.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's an awesome caller, and that's what I've talked about it with Tim a lot. I had a chance to hunt with Mark quite a bit growing up, and hunting with Mark, who's a world champion turkey caller, and then hunting on your own, it's two different styles of hunt.
Where are all the birds at?
Yeah, it's amazing what they can do.
But someone having that transformative experience in nature, suddenly they care about the outdoors, they care about the environment, and then they care about things that are related to that. And and that extends into policy and state laws and regulations governing the outdoors.
Yeah, Missouri has a little bit of a unique setup in that regard, right? We have the commission, the Conservation Commission, but those people are appointed by the governor, right?
Correct.
And so maybe explain that, how government works with the Conservation Department of Missouri and how that works.
I think it was very wise of the founding fathers who set this up in Missouri's Constitution. We have two constitutionally independent commissions. One is the Highway Commission, and I say you want that constitutionally independent because you don't want a bunch of elected officials picking projects in their area. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. So you have in that case, you have 6 men and women that will sit on that commission and talk about road projects and needs and infrastructure. Similar setup with fewer commissioners. There's 4 commissioners on the Conservation Commission. To your point, all governor appointed. And they are independent, although accountable to, as far as their budget is concerned, to the General Assembly, but independent of a lawmaker coming to them. Like, you'll find this weird, but I like the sucker gig, okay, on the Gasconade River. And I keep telling the Conservation Commission, you start that thing on September 1st and you end it basically on February 1st. Let's slide that a little bit. I'd rather it start on October 1st. Well, if there wasn't a commission and you had some politician, we'd be changing all these seasons and it would be horrible. It'd be horrible. And so I do it jokingly, but you can imagine if you didn't have that independent commission. And so they really are separate thought thinkers. Now, the commissioners that I've been involved with and our directors, including our new director, have always been very willing to listen and understand what legislators, policy, and citizens really want. But at the end of the day, those commissioners make the decision what they think is the best thing for conservation, the best thing for our long-term viability. And as you know, our Conservation Commission is looked at as one of the best, if not the best, in the United States.
Missouri model.
They take a lot of heat. And I understand it's hard to create a system that works for an entire state because the southern Missouri portion is a lot different than northern Missouri and everything in between. So I understand, they're trying to do what's best for the state's resource. And they take a lot of heat, probably unfairly in a lot of ways, but they are kind of a beacon. And as far as conservation departments go, they're the gold standard.
And let me just tell you, those 4 commissioners who work probably, 60, 80 hours a month, they're volunteers.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid. And you're right, they do take a lot of heat. We went to tag bear cubs 2 springs ago, and there was a bear biologist who was from Montana, and I was talking to him, a young man, and I said, what did you do in Montana? He said, well, I worked in Yellowstone, I tagged bear and everything else there. And I'm like, well, can I ask you, what brought you to Missouri? And he said, Mr. Kehoe, you have the premier Conservation Department in the United States, and when an opening came available here for a bear biologist, I went after it.
Nice.
And so when you hear that, it's like, wow, this is really good.
In those circles where they know that it's a big deal.
Because you think being in Montana as a bear biologist at Yellowstone has to be pretty cool.
I'd say.
Can't be terrible. Yeah.
Now, I love the Ozarks. It's beautiful. And we had an incredible experience with him. But when he told me that, I was like, that reinforces what I've always been told.
Yeah.
And part of that's related to funding, I think. So we have that 1/8 of 1% sales tax that Missourians have elected to say, like, hey, the conservation is important to us and we're going to fund it accordingly.
Yeah. Well, even that though, like one of your opponents is kind of come out and said like he might get rid of that, right?
Well, he hasn't said he kind of get rid of it. He wants to take away any of those dedicated funding sources, whether it's to conservation, whether it's to soil and water, which our farmers and ranchers very much depend on for various erosion problems, and put it into general revenue. And essentially what would happen is your conservation department, as you know it today, would not be able to function. I mean, you'd have closed conservation areas. It would be a disaster. And you're right, Missourians voted to put that in there. So we're not, in my opinion, not going to go against the will of the voter. But preserving our conservation areas and the ability for people to go out and hunt and fish, I wish everybody had the experience to own a farm, and I know you guys own property, but again, let me go back to the inner city for a minute. Not everybody can do that. So having these conservation areas that's open to the public where they experience the outdoors and be able to enjoy that, that's incredibly important to Missourians. And we need to make sure nobody ever messes with that model.
Yeah.
Well, and what a lot of Missourians may be surprised when they go to other states, a lot of states, if you go to their natural areas, they have fee boxes at the parking lots where you are paying $3, $5, $10 just to access that natural area.
I'm a big fan of our state's park system. We have a fabulous state park system. And let me tell you, our parks people and our conservation people work very well together. I would credit Farmer Director Sarah Parker Pauley, who she was DNR director, so she was over parks, and then she went to conservation. She made sure that marriage got stronger, and it's gotten much stronger. But we're one of only 7 states in the United States where our state parks are still free. Now, you have to pay to camp or something, as you would imagine. But other states, just to your point, just to drive onto the parking lot, you have to pay. One of only 7 states where it's still free.
I didn't realize that. I mean, that's kind of crazy. It's something we probably take for granted.
Exactly.
And Claudia and I go to a lot of state parks and thank the park workers and look at the facilities. And again, state parks are doing a great job of maintaining some beautiful facilities. And you start talking to these visitors from other states, and they'll tell you, like, you know what the best part is? You don't charge to get in here. And, it's like, and so I think you're right, man. I think we take it for granted.
In your opinion, is there something that could be improved about our current system? Or, we were talking about a lot of the great things that we're doing. Is there something that we might need to tweak in the future or to make, the conservation department a little better? Or?
Well, the only thing I've told our new director, Jason, is going to do a great job. I'm a big fan of that appointment. He was picked by the commission to lead that. And Sarah started and I think did a very good job of repairing this relationship. But several years ago, before Sarah, the relationship between conservation and agriculture was not good. And there were a lot of farm folks and in the agriculture, especially agriculture production business, who thought conservation was overreaching and doing this, that, and the other thing. There are a lot of people on the conservation side who thought these farmers, they're no good. Well, farmers are the best conservationists you'll ever meet, because guess what? That's our factory.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of that land. Yeah. We're going to take care of that soil. And so Jason has already met with many of the ag agencies and continuing to make sure those two groups work together for Missouri, because agriculture is our #1 industry. We're #2 in the United States at 87,000 family-owned farms. So I don't know that it's not a wholesale change, but just continuing to build that relationship, I think is really, really important.
Well, it's important to note also that Jason Sumner's received his appointment to the directorship of the Department of Conservation shortly after appearing on this show.
Oh, is that the trick?
Yeah.
So
hey, this is a good omen
making
for you.
any promises.
I'm just saying.
But I'm just saying too.
And Jason Sumner, what his family business is? They're cattle producers.
Oh, are they?
In Lincoln, Missouri.
He talks like a cattle producer. He's got that drawl.
Twang.
So, yeah. He's from just, I think it's in Henry County, but it's just south of Clinton there.
Well, one of the things that I think, and this is, to me, it's like the separation of church and state. In Missouri, you have the separation of the government and the conservation department. And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, right, in the funding and the way you talked about it. And I think that's a smart way to go about it, because like you said, you don't want to have a heavy hand in that. You want to be able to let the voice of the people, because they're sending out those packets every year to have you fill out what's right, what's wrong about the conservation department, what they're doing. So they're taking that feedback and then they're doing research on it and they're acting upon it. Whether maybe the hunters as a whole understand it, that's the way they're doing it. They're not just kind of willy-nilly going and making a decision, or somebody told them to do something and then they go do it. Yeah, they probably take a lot of heat, more than anything, over CWD and how that's being handled. But the reality is the research that they're the money they're putting into that research is guiding the way they're going about it.
And we have a lot of these great support organizations, Conservation Federation, which I've been a member of for a long time. Tyler Schwartz does a great job. There's some of these supporting synergistic fit organizations that also brings the voice of the outdoorsman or the conservationist to the Conservation Commission as well.
Yep.
So there's, besides political input and community input, you have these synergistic groups, whether it's Ducks Unlimited, et cetera, that I'm wearing my dive bomb shirt. So shout out to Cody Stokes, craziest guy I ever met. But so there's a lot of groups that have the ability to interact with the commission, and the commission travels. They go around the state and they listen to people, and I give them great kudos because it's not always easy. You do get people that come in there and want to talk about wild hogs and CWD and the elk, et cetera.
Yeah.
But once they hear kind of the background behind that, and most people start, that makes sense now.
Yeah, yeah. It gives them a little bit different opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure does.
Yeah, yeah. So to me, as an outdoorsman and someone who also pays attention to politics, like I'm always riding the line, and I have a family and full-time job, and just making sure that I'm dipping into and understanding what's relevant, who the candidates are, and what's going to impact my family. And I know crime, inflation, all those things are top of mind for everybody. And I'm sure you're getting a lot of those questions as you go across the state.
Can I give a little 30-second infomercial there?
Yeah.
So crime is the number one issue in our state, number one issue in our nation. I feel like we need a change at the national level as well to make sure that we control not only crime but our immigration policy. So I'm hopeful people will consider that as they go to the ballot in November. But we have crime as our number one issue. If I'm fortunate enough to be selected by Missourians, when my hand comes off the Bible, all of the statewide law enforcement agencies have been kind enough to endorse our candidacy. So state troopers, fraternal order police, chiefs, sheriffs, we have a day one crime plan that we'll put in place that will back the men and women who protect our communities, who will make Missouri the friendliest state and the best state in the union for not only retention but recruitment of law enforcement officers. We want to build our resources back up so we can protect our communities, because you can talk about all the other things, and for me it's improving education opportunities, agriculture, and economic development. All those things have to have a solid foundation first called safe communities.
Yep.
And so crime and immigration is the thing we hear day in and day out as we travel the state.
I'm sure. I mean, just here locally in St. Louis, and I hate to, it's a podcast that goes everywhere, but locally, the St. Louis issue, man, it's not, I have to think a little bit harder when I want to go down there, when I never thought that way in years past. But it's broad daylight type of crime that's going on. It's kind of nuts, smash and grabs, much worse than that. Things going on. You wouldn't want to be down there after a certain time. It's just kind of crazy because St. Louis is a great city, has a lot of great things to offer, but it's just not what it was even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, as a kid, we would take a public bus down to Busch Stadium and buy the bleacher seats and watch the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And go back and my mother, in that case, or the parents of the other kids who were with me, they never thought anything about it. I'd kill my kids if they tried to do that.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't get killed first. So bringing those communities back is very important to me. The St. Louis region, I know you're on a global podcast, but the St. Louis region
I like that.
is 44% of the state's GDP. And so all of our state's important, but you got the front door at risk here. And so we would really want to address that and we have to back the police. We cannot defund the police. Social workers do not work going into a neighborhood where there's gangs and drugs.
Well, this is anecdotal, but my neighbor was a police officer down in St. Louis, and he ended up retiring early. His wife and his kids just didn't want him to be working there anymore. So he retired early, and then he found out that, it's like he was doing private security for a while, and he finally got a new job. He's back on the police force, but it's down where it's a little more rural. And it's just like, you hear about the trouble recruiting these guys. They're kind of demonized, and sure, I'm sure there's a bad apple in every group, but for the most part, like every cop I've ever met has been pretty upstanding, so it's just, I don't know. It's been pretty shitty to see how they've been demonized in the process.
Well, as a state, we need to have a policy. And again, as a nation, we need to have a policy. I recently met with J.D. J.D. Vance, our new vice president candidate, and he gets it because he comes from a very poor area of Ohio, and he said it best, is that nationally, if our national leaders aren't talking about protecting our communities and protecting the men and women in police, if they're coddling criminals instead of putting them away, that sends a loud message that crime is okay, and we need to make sure we need to change in our country, and I believe here in our state, to make sure the criminals know we're putting them away.
You mentioned J.D. Vance, and so that kind of transitions me into Trump and the assassination attempt, and they instantly go after, hey, the shooter was shooting an AR, so we need stricter gun laws. And, what are your thoughts on that approach?
Can I tell you something? I was on a radio station the other day. It might have been public radio up in Kansas City. I was doing an interview. This question came up. And I said, do you know where I got my first gun? And I think the interviewer was shocked to know that I had a gun.
A child had a gun?
And I had, every time Claudia sees, why did you buy another gun vault? I tell her, you know how many guns we need, honey? And she says, how many? I said, just one more.
Yep.
My first weapon I got when I was 12 years old. It was in front of my house. It's 38 Special. I still have it today from a gang fight. That happened from me to the cameras of our front door. I mean, it was a vicious gang fight.
Yeah.
And what I'm telling you is the person that dropped that pistol, he didn't go buy it at Bass Pro.
Yeah.
Okay? The criminals are not going and abiding by laws
the
to
legal
go buy
system
weapons
to get the weapon.
But let me just, and our mayor here of our city, and I know a global podcast, I get it. When she wanted to come out with restrictions on some of these things, and she's from the same neighborhood I'm from, I'm like, look, how many people that have one of those weapons went to the store and bought? None. Exactly none. So whenever you impose more gun laws, all you're doing is taking the law-abiding citizens and making it tougher on them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me we have policymakers that think that you're going to put restrictions on how somebody buys and purchases a gun, and the criminals are going to say, oh, that's really bad. The criminals are laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We do not want to give up our Second Amendment rights. Trust me. And you all know that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your listeners know that.
Yeah.
Do not ever let that happen.
Yeah, and I think where people, when you get into the tough conversations, when you have mass shootings, when you have gun violence in schools, and that's where people really get emotional about it, rightfully so. But you also still have to use some common sense approach to it. The amount of guns that we have in our country, you're not wiping them from the marketplace. People, unless you're going door to door, which would never go over, you can't take that back, right? So the genie's out of the bottle. So what's the approach to make sure that we can make a safe, make sure that people that shouldn't have guns in their hands are vetted properly, right? Because I always see stuff about background checks. I've never bought a gun where I didn't have to do a background check. I don't understand that. It's like they always say we need background checks. Have you ever bought a gun without a background?
Some states you have to do background checks on ammo.
Yeah. Illinois, right?
Yeah, that's why
we have to have the FOID.
We call that the
Unless
people's,
you're non-resident.
We call that the People's Republic of Illinois.
Yeah, I escaped years ago.
But you're right. Every time there is a tragedy, everybody wants to point to the gun, and what everybody should start pointing to is the culture, the mental health problems that we have in our community that nobody wants to address, the family unit that has just fallen apart in some parts of our state, and the fact that we've lost the ability to make sure young people, as they grow up, they understand the value of life. They understand the value of a video game, but they don't understand the value of life. And I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. I'm just saying that we've moved so far away from, the basic right and wrongs that the immediate argument to, that's the gun. The gun was there, but you didn't say that when the guy drove the car through the parade and killed a bunch of people. They didn't eliminate cars. So there's a bigger holistic problem that's pretty deep, to be honest with you. But that's where we need to get to.
When you talk about the mental illness side of it, and what is a decent approach towards trying to make sure that there's help for people that need it, or that there's a way to identify people that might need it and get them help? Because that is the area that the right seems to lean in on, but I've never really heard a great solution for it.
Yeah, well, I say the mental health crisis in our country is the number one crisis that nobody wants to talk about.
That and obesity. I mean, I think obesity would be right up there.
Yeah. And so there's one of the problems with mental health is that, our families struggle with it. I mean, most families, but they don't ever want to talk about it. It's kind of this little secret or whatever. And so sometimes people notice somebody in their family or their neighbor has some issues, and instead of getting them help, they just kind of sweep it on the carpet. And the next thing we know, something not good sometimes happens. So being able to identify and make sure folks know that they have the resources and start to get this out in the open. This is like a disease. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to be embarrassed to talk about one of your family members or yourself to be able to say, I need help from this. And if we're not teaching the right things in school and some of this woke culture stuff that drives me nuts, if nothing else, can we start teaching people it's all right that if you don't feel good or there's something going on that just doesn't seem right in your brain, ask for help. Let's get out there and go.
The needle seems to be moving the right way on that, but then there are people like when I was traveling this past week, I saw a lady with a emotional support pet in a tiny little box in the airport, and I was like, you might be pushing the boundaries,
bucking the system a little bit.
Yeah, taking
had a dog that you just wanted to take to the airport.
Exactly.
Some of the emotional support animals in the list of animals that are is incredible. I will tell you that I do a lot with veterans community, as I said.
Oh yeah,
Retrieving Freedom and Canines on the Front Line. There's some veterans, especially from the Gulf War and Afghanistan, that really struggle, and sometimes that service dog makes a huge difference for them. I've seen people that wouldn't even come out of their house all of a sudden be productive, have jobs, have families, because of what that, as crazy as that sounds, that they just needed that one catalyst to kind of get them into the right spot.
Sure. And makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything we missed that you want to touch on yet?
Well, there's probably all kinds of stuff we want to touch on. I'm a Ford dealer. Do you want to buy an F-150 or anything today?
Okay, so here's
how about some steers or heifers?
Yeah, I don't need any more heifers.
You need a horse.
I've ridden a horse once. It was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life, I think.
Really?
Yeah. So the truck thing, I might be in the market. Yesterday, I'm at the farm, and we're putting out trail camera. I'm brush hogging. I'm doing all this stuff, and I decided that I needed to get as close as I could to my truck to brush hog. And I was backing up. I'm looking back, and the back wheel on the brush hog got stuck sideways as pushing the dirt. And so I'm trying to turn the wheel to get it to go straight, right? And before I know it, I'm like pushing against something really hard. It was the bucket of my tractor pushing the quarter panel of my truck. I was like, oh my gosh.
We've all been there.
Yes.
Idiot.
We've all been there. Yeah. No, I would just, I appreciate you guys having me on. And, you're building awareness for outdoor activities is incredible, not just for the experience, but as a Republican conservative, I also say thank you for what you do for the state's economy and for the viewers in the states around us, our economy. I mean, outdoor activity is a huge economic impact to our country and to our state. People should never forget that. I toured Fiocchi's factory. They're all made down outside of Springfield in Ozark, Missouri. They're making 600 million rounds a year out of that place.
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
The demand's off the chart. They're looking at expanding again. So, just all of the economic impact that we've seen our outdoor activities bring to our state, and then just really, again, as an inner city kid, finding folks that haven't had that experience and getting them out there. You guys all know what it is, and I've been fortunate to know what it is. Continue to expose people to what conservation can do for you, what outdoor activities. I really do think that brings you a little bit closer to nature and to God. I know Johnny talks about that. Morris talks about it all the time. And I said earlier, we need to really try to get back to people understand to respect life, respect each other, and kind of work on that culture. In a weird way, outdoor activities and hunting and fishing really do that for somebody.
Agreed.
We're fortunate that Johnny Morris, you speak of kind of Missouri made and Missouri, born and bred. Johnny Morris and Bass Pro, what they've done in the world, as far you talk about global, they actually are. It's unbelievable the amount of people they've helped introduce and kind of hold their hand and bring them along that journey.
And you talk about somebody who helps people and doesn't really want recognition for it, not just kids but veterans, et cetera. I mean, John has a incredible heart that has given back as a servant mentality would, and he's not only made a great economic impact, he's made a great societal impact, I would argue as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man on a mission.
He's a man on a mission.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. I know you had a billion stops along the way here, and you're pressing towards the end of the first part of your race. So I appreciate you coming in. Mark and Terry appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. I hope that again. I hope people go out and vote in Missouri. The primary is August 6th. We would love to have their consideration, but again, on behalf of our states and our country's heroes, please exercise your right to vote.
Absolutely,
100%.
Here,
and if you're a non-resident, come to our state and see what it's like to.
Oh yeah, you're going to enjoy it. Yeah.
One of the best opportunities, because you talk about some of our neighboring states, it's very difficult. It can be a difficult process to get tags to go hunt out of state, and it's getting harder in a lot of areas, especially out west. Mm-hmm. And we're very fortunate to have this resource, and the conservation department does a good job of going to purchase more properties and land to create bigger wildlife areas and conservation areas. So we're very, very lucky.
Well, this is the first global podcast I've been on, and award-winning.
Yeah, award-winning yes.
Global podcast.
Now the politician is coming out.
That's what I heard.
That's right.
And it's for sure the first one where I have screaming freedom.
Hey, this is the beauty of what we're doing here. Screaming freedom. That's what it's all about.
That's awesome.
Capitalism and good taste.
We love capitalism. We love success in this country. Some people don't. I love success.
Andy Purcell and the boys over there at First Farm, they know all about it.
They do a good job. Yeah. We're happy they're Missouri made as well.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much, and good luck along the way.
You bet. I appreciate you guys having me on.
More than anything, I'd like to share the woods with you one day.
That's going to happen.
Turkey season.
With me or Claudia?
Well, probably the killer. Let's go with Claudia.
Yeah. I tell people all the time when she says she's a turkey hunter, I'm like, no, honey, you got to tell people you're a turkey killer.
That's right.
I like it.
There's a difference. Tim's a turkey hunter.
Yeah, I just like the outdoors.
He's a deer hunter. Turkey
That's
hunter.
what people say when they're not successful turkey hunting.
That's exactly
they say, well,
right,
I just enjoy.
Yeah.
Whenever you say, how was turkey season? They, well, I really like the outdoors. You know what that
Beautiful
meant.
Yeah.
They were unsuccessful.
They might as well grab a pair of binoculars and go watch birds.
And as you know, the Conservation Commission just passed all-day turkey season.
That's
here,
right.
So,
That's right.
You can hunt all the way to sundown.
And I didn't realize how difficult that would make my marriage, because I spent way too much time
Are you done yet?
all day hunting.
Well, Claudia was out with Chuck Sykes in the morning opening day, and I went out with him in the afternoon. If we wouldn't have that afternoon hunt, I would have been able to be successful on opening day. But at about 4:30, I was able to be successful.
Hey, right.
Perfect.
Yeah, when I said, you want to pose with both of our pictures, Claudia said, well, my meat's already in the freezer. She shot it 10 hours
We're already
ago.
frying it up for lunch,
Yeah, right.
bud.
Yeah, we ate the nuggets.
All right.
Thank you, guys. God bless
thank
you for
you.
what you do.
Yeah,
All
me
right.
too.
Until next time, peace out.
See ya.
Take land management to the next level with DeerCast's exclusive virtual rain gauges. Pinpoint accuracy and historical data, all powered by industry-leading ag weather services. DeerCast has the tools to keep you ahead of your game.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast Maps, waypoints, weather, virtual rain gauges, and more. Every tool you need to get ahead of your game.